Now, your health, your safety. This is ABC7 News.
I'm Kristen Z. Welcome to our daily special called Getting Answers. We're asking experts your question every day at 3 o'clock here to get answers for you in real time. So today we are breaking down for you Governor Gavin Newsom's briefing. He laid out in more detail how the state would approach easing the stay-at-home order and when, as well as which businesses, events, and activities may resume. So a lot to unpack. Let's get right to it and welcome our guests. ABC7 News contributor and San Francisco Chronicle insider Phil Matier, as well as Nate Ballard, who served as Gavin Newsom's communications director when Newsom was mayor of San Francisco. Nate is now the CEO of the public relations agency, The Press Shop. You can see that sign right behind his head there. Thank you both for joining us today via Zoom. How's it going, guys?
It's going good.
All right. Not sure who wants to start this one, but of course, this big announcement is the one Californians have been waiting for. The biggest takeaway I got from today was the governor essentially saying, we're still in stage one, essential only, and we're weeks away from the first step of easing up restrictions, stage two, when schools, child care centers, open spaces, and non-essential offices can reopen with social distancing. I guess, Phil, I'll start with you. What is the reaction in the Bay Area amongst mayors and county supervisors and executives? What are they saying about it?
Well, so far what they're saying is that they are actually in the lead on this, and they've had more stringent guidelines than the governors up till this point. And so they're taking a look at it. But it was interesting, Christian, what happened was the Bay Area Council, which is a collection of the biggest employers in the Bay Area, took a poll of CEOs, about 178 of them, and they found that 7 out of 10 said they wanted the businesses back to reopen within the next 30 days. And that is going to be a challenge for the governor.
Yes, indeed. What are some of those biggest challenges, if you will, either one of you?
Well, it's that, there's got to be a stable situation on the health front before he can go and reopen more crowded workplaces like hair salons. And so, that's why he put hair salons and movie theaters in the phase 3 rather than phase 2. But he did signal that within weeks, not months, there's the possibility of opening up other types of businesses, some retail with delivery, some types of firms, including like PR firms, where you can make accommodations for social distancing and get back to business.
I think you're also going to see, construction places, and you can control the environment, where social distancing can be practiced without
people coming in and out. You can control it. Even manufacturing, places where you can say who should be in the building, who shouldn't, and you can take care of them. Offices, you can say, okay, we're going to reopen the office, but we're going to be more spread apart because we want some conditions in there that it can be monitored, that you're going to be doing safe practices. Let's say we spread apart 6 feet or more. We wear masks. We control who's coming in and out. And we also guarantee that people who want to work from home or need to work from home can continue to work from home if they're not healthy enough or don't feel comfortable coming in. You start putting those combinations together and you can start, expanding what can get back on track. And the governor was also very smart, is that he set out some broad strokes and goals that he wants California to be going towards in order to move to the next step, rather than anything specific that says we got to make this number or it's not going to happen. He's given himself quite a bit of room to maneuver in because he's also feeling pressure from rural counties and businesses and places that are saying, look, we need to get back, and we're not San Francisco or Los Angeles or Santa Clara.
Yeah, let's talk about the challenges of such a big state like California, right? Phil, you mentioned the rural versus the urban. Some of those rural lawmakers have been pushing hard to say, hey, let our area with our few cases, get started on some of these things first. How do you govern in a state and make rules for everyone when just the situations are so vastly different between a densely populated area like the Bay Area or LA versus, the Northern California counties, for example?
I think Nate can weigh in on this one, but my early take is from watching governors and mayors and such is what you do is, Kristen, you don't necessarily make hard rules. You make sort of broad things, and that's what the governor's talking about. I'll let the locals do it, but it's going to be under state supervision. You try not to create a conflict. You give everybody some room, some space, as the governor likes to say, for them to sort of adjust. Because on one hand, he says, well, the hand's connected to the arm's connected to the body. We're all interconnected. But the flip side of that is, no, we're different different in parts of the state, so you've got to allow for that. And sometimes you allow for that by just acting like it's not quite there and you're not pushing everybody at the same pace.
I got it, yeah. But Nate, isn't there a downside to that as well? I mean, I can see how, you know, by being purposely fuzzy, right, you're giving yourself a little leeway there. But then you have, let's say, Napa County saying we can open golf courses. But then in neighboring Sonoma County or maybe Marin County, they're not opening up golf courses. So what, do people from here who want to play golf go over to Napa? And what does that mean?
Right. I think that the governor today in his remarks signaled some flexibility around the counties. But we've also seen what happens when some counties are more permissive than others. Like last weekend in Orange County, everyone went to the beach in Orange County because the neighboring beaches were closed. And so I think, you know, obviously there have to be some kinks worked out here, but the governor was very clear about what it is, what's going to be required to move to that stage 2 within weeks, not months. And that's got to be, you know, a stabilization of hospitalization, hospital surge capacity, and other, you know, very specific health benchmarks. So I think it's helpful for those of us that, you know, would love to get back to business to hear that he's approaching it in such a rational way.
Yeah, in a more surgical way, too. I think we're doing well on the ICU and hospitalization benchmarks. The testing still needs to be ramped up, but he's saying hopefully in the next few weeks that'll allow us to get into stage 2. So as a parent, I got to ask you gentlemen about stage 2, right, where they think schools may be able to reopen. However, for all intents and purposes, all the counties around here, certainly all the school districts, have moved to remote learning for the rest of the school year. So what is the sense of, I guess, is there a rush in that regard when you're really already looking at the end of the school year anyway?
Well, yeah, I mean,
there's a couple of things that you got to think about. First of all, is that the timing of it. For people to get back to work, they're going to need somebody to take care of the kids. So that's child care centers and schools. You're not going to be able to leave them at home and both parents just go off. So the other thing he did, and I thought this was a very smart move, was say, yes, the schools are out probably for the remainder of this year. There's not that much longer left in this school year, but they'll start up in July maybe. Maybe they'll start up earlier. We'll have summer schools or an earlier start, and that way we'll try to make up for the time as well as get some relief in there for the parents.
Yeah, Nate, that was a big shocker to me when I heard the governor say that, because that's very challenging. You have about 1,000 school districts in California. Each has its own teachers union to deal with and negotiate their school calendar and work contract. That's not something you can just unilaterally do, can you? To say we're starting in July and all the teachers unions will have to go with that?
No, certainly not. I think there's, you know, a lot of kinks have to be worked out. And also, the kind of school that we see in July may not be what we picture as school right now. You know, maybe it will be, you know, 5 or 6 kids in a room, you know, spaced apart. Maybe it'll be a mixture of Zoom classes and in-person classes. You know, we've just got to figure out what's safe. And I don't think he's saying across the board from Colusa County to San Diego, we're going to open schools on July 1st. I think he's saying, look, we need to look into ways to do this safely and keep flattening the curve.
You know, Kristen, you
brought up a very good point. Let's say, and use the schools as an example. You said, how would you get all these schools and all of these teachers unions to say agree to something in this short of notice? And across the board, that's the challenge that the governor is trying to weave his way through, whether it's testing, getting the numbers up to the point where it matches what we need, and getting anything done, even down to like policing these guidelines once they start. The fact is, we don't necessarily have that infrastructure in place or those agreements in place that, as you said, you can just say, let's go do that. This is going to rely, as it has so far, on the public going along with it, voluntarily going along with it, agreeing to it, and working things out on the local level. Because, Nate, correct me if I'm wrong, this would just be, I mean, the state has a hard enough time running the DMV. I can't necessarily see them do testing and redoing the schools and everything like that in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
I know. You guys, we got to take a break on air, but let's bring this conversation over to our live platforms, live streaming platforms. So we'll be taking a short break and be right back, but you can join us over on Facebook Live or live streaming platforms on ABC7news.com as well. All right, gentlemen, you know what's interesting? As we're doing this live on Facebook, I can't tell you how many comments have come in from people saying, no, my kids are staying at home. No, I don't want to send my kids back to school in the middle of the summer. No, their safety should be #1. This is crazy. I would have thought some parents would be hitting a wall right around now with their kids, you know, staying at home, work from home, everybody going crazy and saying, kids, get back. But that's not what I'm seeing here from our Facebook audience.
Well, they might be too busy right now to be on Facebook with you, but I'm hearing that as well, that people are not necessarily hitting the wall, but this is a strain on a number of levels. They want the safety of the children, but I mean, the children aren't at the greatest risk of this. It's the elderly that seem to be at the greatest risk. So, Christian, I mean, some of this is going to take some education as well. You also got to, just opening things up is not going to mean that people are going to return to them. For example, you could open up BART tomorrow, but I'm not sure that you're going to have the 200,000 riders in the morning lined up to get on. They might say, no, I'm going to pass on a crowded train right now. So you can open things, but getting people to do it, that's going to continue to be voluntary.
Yeah. All right. How much time do we have before we go back on air, guys?
35 seconds.
35 seconds. Okay. Yeah, this is so interesting. This is, yes, the children are at risk. No, I have a teacher friend who said I might have to quit if they make me go back in July. I don't know if that's representative of the broad sentiment, but certainly there's a segment that's not ready for that. Teachers need a break. Oh, I'm getting a comment from a teacher on Facebook saying we need a break too, right? Right. Because they're not, even though school's not in session physically, they're still teaching right now remotely. All right, we're going back on air.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, we are back with ABC7 News contributor and Chronicle insider Phil Matier, along with Nate Ballard, friend of Gavin Newsom's. He also once served as his communications director back when Newsom was mayor of San Francisco. Gentlemen, you watched with interest and intensity the briefing today by the governor. He talked about we're a few weeks away from stage 2, being able to ease up on some things, and maybe school, child care centers, some offices opening with social distancing. I want to show our viewers stage 3. He didn't give a timeline for that, but he said that was months away likely. And that includes things like hair salons, nail salons, gyms, movie theaters, sports without live audiences, and religious services. And then stage 4, even farther away, again, no timeline, but months away, are the, live sporting events or professional sports with audiences packed in there, concerts, things like that. Gentlemen, those are both the things that are considered the fabric of a society, the social and civic fabric, and also the money makers. So when you put off those things for months more, what is the economic ramification for California?
Nate?
For the professional sports, if they shut down the arenas to fans, they could still hold games and they could still be televised. And that's really where a lot of the money comes from in professional sports. So I just think we're going to see over the next few months different industries finding different ways to adapt and sort of bring back normal life in some form or fashion without necessarily going to the most high-risk situations.
Christian,
businesses tend to have 2 doors. They have a front door and a back door. And don't be surprised if some of these businesses, especially the smaller ones you're talking, maybe the barber or something like that, don't start working out the back door, taking in customers one at a time, maybe going to people's houses, sort of just trying to make do. As far as religious services go, you can have a religious service. Maybe it might be in a field or a park or a football field, and everybody's spread out. Going into churches or congregating like that, that's going to be different. That's where you have, I think what some of the things where the governor is trying to emphasize is we're going to work our way back, but it's got to be in a controlled manner where if you open a business, you know who's coming in and going out. If it's a school, you have conditions set up around it, and not necessarily just people randomly getting together for an event. I think they've got to keep that off the table for a while.
Yeah, I mean, do you gentlemen, Nate, do you think that designation of essential and non-essential is still valid? I mean, in the beginning, that was an easy way to say, boom, this is what we're doing. But now, as we get more surgical and look at the risk entailed in that particular job or task or interaction, do we still need that designation at all?
Yeah, I think we're starting to outgrow that. At the beginning, it was clear that, cops and firefighters were going to be essential services, but then, cannabis stores started to make their way in there. And then I think we'll see the same thing with stage 2 and stage 3. It's if you're in stage 2, if in weeks we decide to open up and it's stable enough so we can be in stage 2, you might see hair salons saying, look, we're going to be able to distance ourselves adequately to make this safe, and so don't lump us in with church services or movie theaters. And so I think you're going to see some some attempted migration from stage 3 to stage 2, and then from stage 4 to stage 3. And I think that's just, that's the way it's going to be, because, people need to make money, and they're going to try to make an argument for why their business is safe.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and they can make them argument after
they get cited or something, because, like I said, enforcement on some of this, a movie theater you can enforce, an after-hours club, as we did in San Francisco, you can enforce. Small things going on are more difficult. But from the get-go, what was an essential business and a non-essential business was politically motivated in some ways, but it was charged with the idea of just visibly trying to get people to stay in place. In other words, in San Francisco, across from the studio here, there is a housing going up, and it's affordable housing, so it was allowed to continue. Down the street, the Embarcadero, you had market rate housing. That wasn't allowed. They're the same kind of construction crews doing the same types of things, but one was deemed essential, one wasn't. Road work, Caltrans is redoing the Alameda interchange. That's being deemed essential. Another construction project would not be. And part of that was the idea that what we didn't want to do was it appear to be business as usual out of the gate. It was a Herculean task to get everybody just to stay at home, and you didn't want to necessarily have a lot of exceptions going into that.
Mm-hmm. I also want to ask you, because I feel like even though a lot of people think the governor didn't go far enough in terms of spelling out the specifics of the timeline, and people wanted to hear specifics, I think he's already gone a lot farther than we could have imagined just looking at what he said 3 weeks ago. And I wonder if it has anything to do with the fact that we're now hearing there were deaths, COVID-19 deaths here in this community earlier than we thought. Therefore, it's been here longer than we thought. Therefore, there are probably more people in our community who have already been exposed. And so the antibodies are out there more widespread than we thought. Does that have policy implications?
Nate?
I think that during this COVID crisis, every day has been like a week, and every week has been like a month. What the governor has learned in the last week is all kinds of information, all kinds of new information that he didn't have before. And so now finally he's able to lay out a framework for a reasonably phased reopening of society. But if you listen to his language, he is not unequivocal in the way that he talks about it. He always makes it clear that he's going to make decisions based on available data, not some timeline that he laid down today.
All right. Nate, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate your time today and the insider track on the thinkings and inner workings of Governor Gavin Newsom. Of course, you can read Phil Matier's columns in the San Francisco Chronicle Wednesdays and Sundays. So when we come back, we're going to talk with the Sonoma County supervisor about that county's plan to ease up restrictions despite Governor Newsom's order. So that's coming up next. But join us over on the live stream platforms right now if you want to chat a little longer. All right, so I'm still here with Phil Matier, and we've got a couple minutes, I think, Phil. So I want to ask you, Governor Newsom has been overall getting pretty good reviews on a national level for his handling. Of course, initially you're measured by your case count, right, your death count, and if you're flattening the curve, you're looking good. But talk about the transition now into how California's economy comes out of all this.
Well, that's the big one. I mean, Gavin Newsom and the governors around the country were shutting down, and you can do that with a switch. You can make that order, and people were up for it. I mean, they realized that there was a problem, and now they're in the midst of it. But, Kristen, this is where it's going to get really dicey for the governor and for the state. Not only reopening, but, for example, if you tell restaurants they can reopen, but they can only have half the number of tables, I mean, that's not reopening. That's a death sentence for them. If you tell manufacturers that they have certain regulations they now have to follow that make it impossible for them to do their work, that's not going to work. He's got to come up with a way to get this thing back up in a way that is people feel safe, but also don't forget that other states are opening up as well. So every day here is going to be amplified more by what happens in Texas, Florida, and other states. If they're okay opening up, that's going to increase pressure around here. Why aren't we?
Absolutely. All right. Hey, we're not an island, even though sometimes it feels like we are politically. We absolutely are not, this nation state of California. So, Phil, thanks a lot. Good chat today. Appreciate your time.
Take care, and we'll be on this for the rest.
All right, thanks. All right, folks, coming back on air in 15 seconds.
Back in.
Welcome back. Sonoma County's health officer says they will start making some changes possibly to restrictions this week. Right now, joining me to talk about what the county is doing is Supervisor Linda Hopkins. I know it was short notice and you made the time for us, so Linda, I really appreciate it.
Of course. Good afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine, thanks. We'd like to hear a little bit about what Sonoma County is doing and the approach you're taking. You have certainly been on the forefront in terms of joining the 6-county Bay Area consortium, if you will, to go even further than the state mandate in terms of the stay at home. But now some changes are coming this week designed with, I know you're looking at health, but also rebooting the economy. So talk to us about what kind of changes are coming up that you will announce this week.
Absolutely. So we are actually looking at aligning our local order with the state health order, essentially being as permissive as we can within the confines of the executive order issued by the governor. And that will actually allow us to open up opportunities in the construction industry, the real estate industry, landscaping, and some other sorts of things. For instance, flower deliveries just in time for Mother's Day are some of the new economic opportunities that we'll be opening up. Additionally, we are also going to be opening up our park system for a soft reopening and allowing our residents to bike or walk to their nearest neighborhood park. And this is truly a data-driven decision. We have been tracking, our number of cases very closely. Our shelter-in-place order was actually far more effective than the modelers that we hired predicted. So we've actually been able to reduce transmission rates by about 75% from our shelter-in-place order, and actually think that our transmission factor is around 0.625 at this point in time. So we're following the data. We're ramping up our contact testing and our surveillance testing as well. And that's really helping us get a hold on the disease to the point where we feel like we can start to soften some of those most stringent elements of shelter in place.
Look, I know for Sonoma County, tourism is also a huge part of it with your wonderful restaurants and wineries. How much are those industries a part of the discussion at the table in terms of shaping these policies? And how important is the industry in terms of the financials versus the health?
We are in the process of developing an economic recovery task force that will have liaisons to all of the industries that are so critical to Sonoma County. Unfortunately for the tourism industry, there isn't good news. That remains a relatively higher risk type of business and is still considered non-essential by the governor's order. So we are not seeing any relaxations around the tourism industry. And a lot of our towns are being hit very hard. I represent the Lower Russian River, a popular vacation spot for a lot of folks from the Bay Area. The closures and the impacts to those businesses have been extraordinarily severe, especially since we experienced flooding last year. And then, of course, the impacts of the power shutoffs and the fire evacuations from the Kincaid fire. So it's been rough, but we are hoping that we can start to develop best management practices so that when we do get the green light from the state, when we do get the green light from our public health officer, that we are ready to go and we have, sort of sanitation stations, that we have social distancing, already kind of pre-planned for all of our different industries so that they're ready to hit the ground running.
Can you talk about, and I know this pain was shared, by all these counties, but in terms of the folks who, due to the stay-at-home and the ones that were considered non-essential, not being able to work, how much have people been hurt? And are those people in similar life situations as those who are on the front lines, working at the grocery stores and the Instacart delivery business? Talk about the real impacts that you've seen on your residents and their livelihoods.
It's heartbreaking. I'm a member of the First 5 Commission in Sonoma County, and last night we got the first preview of a survey that was sent out to families. And this includes parents of young children, as well as families in which you've got, one member of the family who's pregnant. And actually fully 64% of our Spanish-speaking families had either experienced a complete loss of income or a partial loss of income due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And actually contrast that with our English-speaking families. Of the English-speaking families that were surveyed, 2/3 of them had experienced no impact. And so unfortunately what we're seeing is disparate impacts that really come down to, previous socioeconomic status and also actually racial disparities. And so our Latinx community has been very hard hit, unfortunately, by this pandemic. I'm really saddened to see that certain areas, as well as certain populations and communities, will be experiencing more severe impacts than others. And those are the ones we need to focus on helping.
Are you considering joining the 6 counties in the immediate Bay Area in extending the shelter in place through the end of May, or is that off the table?
We are absolutely going to be extending our shelter-in-place order, although we think that right now we will actually align with the governor's order and not really have a sunset date. Rather, every single week we'll be evaluating where we are with respect to meeting the governor's 6 indicators that he has set out, with respect to testing, PPE, hospital surge capacity. So we're hoping to be able to provide information to our residents in real time regarding how we are ramping up in order to make sure that we are ready for once we get that green light to reopen the other sectors of our economy that are currently classified as non-essential businesses.
Okay. And you heard the governor today. He mentioned in stage 2, the phase, that we will enter probably in a few weeks. Schools could reopen, childcare centers. Are you making preparations to ensure folks who work in those areas would have the proper protective gear and helping them in terms of working out the social distancing rules to ensure everyone's safety as they get back to work?
Absolutely. And that will be the work partly of our economic recovery task force. We actually had an economist, and he suggested actually considering working to bulk order supplies, not just for those who are currently providing supplies to. We're already sourcing PPE, for instance, for our local hospitals and clinics and also unsheltered and homeless care providers. But we're also talking about, could we serve potentially as a hub to try to order those sorts of supplies for small businesses as they reopen? It might be something as simple as hand sanitizer that allows certain small retail opportunities, to come back online in Sonoma County. It could be ordering mass amounts of gloves so that customers and, employees alike can make sure that they're utilizing a new set of gloves every time they come into the workplace. And so we really want to do everything we can to try to get our small businesses the tools to keep them safe and to keep their customers safe and to give the customers confidence that they can return to not our old normal, but some semblance of a new normal in which they feel safe and confident being able to support local retail and local businesses.
All right, Sonoma County Supervisor Linda Hopkins, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Take care. Have a great afternoon.
You too. Good luck. All right, we're going to take a short break on air, but the conversation continues on our live streams, including Facebook Live right now. So feel free to join us over there.
And break.
All right, great. Folks, we have a short break here, and I just want to check out some of your comments. Many of you feel like you are not ready to send your kids back. I'm noticing that. Hair salons are not crowded. They can make accommodations. There are many of you echoing the sentiment that you might be an independent contractor or small business and are ready to resume what you do safely. Practicing social distancing and wishing that you could get back to work. Many of you are saying that you're ready for that and that the numbers support that, is what some of you are saying. Yeah, some of you are pointing out that your number of cases or deaths, the number's been low. So that could certainly be because you took all the steps that were recommended and mandated and did those steps well. So now you see the results of that. Today, Governor Newsom did in his news conference indicate and emphasize really the point that those measures need to continue and we wouldn't be where we are, which is not having inundated hospitals because we have taken those steps. So wanted to pass that along to you. Thank you, those of you who are on Facebook with us. Vaccines, yeah, well, vaccines still will take time. 12 to 18 months is the suggestion, although there are some preliminary vaccine trials that have proven fairly effective on animals. So we'll see what happens. But usually they say about 12 months. I would assume dental will be in stage 3, yes.
15.
Okay, can we put up one of the stages, Eric? Yeah, I think so. 45 is a lot. Maybe stage 2?
5, 4, 3, 2.
And welcome back. Before we go, we just want to quickly summarize what Gavin Newsom, the governor, said today in his briefing about reopening California and sort of the roadmap for businesses. He says we're still in stage 1, so essential only. We're planning for the reopening, but stage 2 is probably in a few weeks. and that low-risk businesses could open then, which includes schools, childcare facilities, and some retail businesses for curbside pickup. However, stage 3, that's further off, months away, and that's what you consider our malls, movie theaters, nail salons, etc. And stage 4, the concerts and the live sporting events with fans, that's months away as well. Thanks for joining us today on Getting Answers. Hey, Eric.